Let's look at the second so-called proof of evolution and recognize that all these so-called proofs of evolution are what I would subtitle things aren't always the way they appear. At first, these claims sound good, but as you have more information looking at it, we recognize there's some real problems here. The second claim is that when things are similar in the present, that means there's a common ancestor. We heard that over and over again in our textbooks. Let's look at some of the examples that we see today that our kids are getting. One of them is called ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Another one that we look at is homology. Now you may have two questions with both of these terms. Number one, what in the world are they talking about? And number two, why don't these people speak in plain English? Well, let's look at these different ideas. They're very simple, but I think it shows you that just because something is similar doesn't mean any common ancestry or evolutionary relationship. An easy way to think of ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, I call it ORP, is to think of the basic scenario that we're told on how man evolves. Basically, you started off with that first primordial cell, and then it was transformed into a fish-like animal, and then an amphibian, a reptile, and then man came on the scene, right? We're told this takes billions of years for this transformation to take place by evolution. Now, the difference between this and ORP is ORP takes place every day in the womb of a woman who's pregnant. What we're told is that very first primordial cell is just like the very first, the fertilized egg that happens at the time of conception. We'll call him little Johnny. Little Johnny goes through a fish-like stage, an amphibian stage, a reptile stage, a mammal stage, and at some point before 9 months is up, he becomes human. How many of you have heard that thing before? See, they're saying by looking at the embryos, they look similar to these different creatures. Therefore, there's a common ancestry. Well, where in the world did this idea come from? Well, the person responsible, his name is Ernst Haeckel. He was a zoologist, a contemporary of Darwin back in the 1800s. He looked at embryonic development of animals, compared that to embryonic development in man, and because there was similarity, he said, common ancestry. Along with this claim is also the idea that little Johnny has gill slits, a yolk sac, and a tail. Now, the gill slits would imply that he goes to a fish-like stage, yolk sac, a reptile, tail like a monkey, all right? Well, what we know today is that all of these claims are inaccurate. None of these structures actually develop into those type of structures. We know that that simply just was something Ernst Haeckel thought about. The good news, at least about this idea, is that more and more scientists are beginning to come out and say, time out, this is all wrong. Here's a quote out of the New York Times. It says, several years ago, though, biologists discovered that many of the drawings were fraudulent and that the true resemblances were not nearly so striking. Nevertheless, some textbooks still contain them. One of the texts that includes the faulty drawings is the third edition of Molecular Biology of the Cell, the bedrock text of the field. In an interview, Dr. Elberts, who's the president of the National Academy of Sciences, said he believed Haeckel's drawings were overinterpreted or highly idealized, rather than outright fakes. But he said they would be removed from the fourth edition of the textbook to appear at the end of the year. It goes on to say, biologists say the findings do not shake their confidence in the theory of evolution. The good news here, again, is that we know it's wrong. We want to get it out of the textbooks. What we've seen when we look at creatures all around us, as well as human beings, that from the time of fertilization all the way through the time of maturity, fish are always fish, turtles are always turtles, pigs are always pigs, cows are always cows, cats are always cats. You know, as a veterinarian, I saw numerous times where kittens were undeveloped, you know, in the process of just being in the profession. And never did I see any kittens that looked like catfish. Never did I see any that looked like catbirds. They were just underdeveloped kittens. And when we look at man from the time of fertilization, development, and maturation, he's 100% human from the very beginning. So we can put an X through that whole idea.